Five, four, three, two, one. This is Lights, Camera, Super Action. This is Victor Rosario Fermain, also known as Vic Power. For years, I've been running the Lights, Camera, Super Action page on Facebook. It's a page devoted to comic book movies because we love comics and we love films. Today, we're going to talk about our love-hate relationship with Hawkeye, and we're recording from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we've been here since for Thanksgiving, actually. But we've been looking at sites like the Roberto Clemente statue, the Andy Warhol Museum, and this place right here, Carnegie Museums of Art and Natural History. Great city, I love it. It's a little bit cold though, that's why I'm wearing this jacket. The Hawkeye Disney Plus show is the last Marvel show of the year. It's not the last Marvel movie because there's still Spider-Man No Way Home, but this will be the last Disney Marvel show of 2021. Is it fair to say that we hate Hawkeye, the MCU's Hawkeye? Well, to be fair, I don't think that anyone hates him the same way that I don't think that anyone loves him. No one cares enough about the character to feel one way or another. For instance, well, there are exceptions to the rule, to every rule. My girlfriend hated his guts a little bit when Natasha Romanoff sacrificed herself for him in Vormir. So, there you go. Remember this. Fans campaign for a Black Widow movie. I haven't heard of anybody who has asked for a Hawkeye movie. Nonetheless, we're getting a Disney Plus show. So, before we discuss Hawkeye, first let's mention popular bow and arrow heroes. Katniss Everdeen of the Hunger Games trilogy with Jennifer Lawrence. Daryl Dixon, the crossbow hunter tracker of The Walking Dead, played by Norman Reedus. And Arrow himself, Oliver Queen, Stephen Amell, the centerpiece of the Arrowverse. But every road leads to the legends of William Tell and Robin Hood and their media adaptations. Do you hear this? That's the William Tell Overture by Rossini, by the composer Rossini. Well, in the late 1950s, there was a TV series about William Tell, the 14th century folk hero from Switzerland. But the most famous bow and arrow legend is the English folk outlaw Robin Hood. He dates back to the Crusades, and he has had many big screen adaptations. In all of them, he has robbed the rich and given to the poor. Actors like Taron Egerton, Kevin Costner, Russell Crowe have played Robin, and there has even been a Disney animation and a comedy called Robin Hood Men in Tights. But the best and the most exciting of them all is still 1938's The Adventures of Robin Hood. I think it's still on HBO Max, starring the swashbuckling Errol Flynn as the Robin of Locksley and Olivia de Havilland. These are all period pieces. The very first big screen bow and arrow hero in a modern setting was from 1925. It was called The Green Archer, a 10-episode silent movie serial. This was also rebooted 15 years later in 1940 in a 15-episode movie serial with sound this time, called also The Green Archer. But a year later, DC Comics would publish the very first appearance of Green Arrow by creators Mort Weisinger and George Papp. That brings us back to Hawkeye. Look, I'm a huge fan of the character as created by Stan Lee and Don Heck. His very first appearance came in 1964. He had a circus background and he was an Iron Man villain. After that, he teamed up with the Black Widow. Back then, she was also a villain, and she was a spy for the Soviet Union. He became a hero when he joined the Avengers in Avengers 16. He was part of Cap's Cookie Quartet along with two other former supervillains, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. They were under the leadership of Captain America. He clashed with Cap all the time because he resented authority figures. That's part of what made him likable. His first successful comic book appearance, monthly series, came after 2012's The Avengers, thanks to writer Matt Fraction and artist David Aja. Look, part of his charm is that he wins at avenging, but he has a losing streak at life. He's a lovable, hard luck loser who is respected by gods and great men. This is the Hawkeye I know and love. But that's not the only Hawkeye in comic books. There is the Ultimate Universe Hawkeye. He's a Black Ops operative under Nick Fury. He is more bullseye than Hawkeye, meaning that every tossable object is a deadly weapon in his hands. He's also a family man and frankly a jerk. MCU Hawkeye is neither. He's not a cold-blooded assassin or a likable lucky loser. In fact, he feels a little bit like an imposter. Oddly enough, the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes animated show successfully combined both takes of Hawkeye. For a long time, he was in the MCU. Now I'm talking about the MCU. For a long time, he was an undercooked character. He almost felt like an afterthought. He was the only Avenger who was not developed in a previous movie, like the Hulk, like Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor were. Even the Black Widow had a big part in Iron Man 2. Remember, a movie's development takes years, so it looks like Hawkeye wasn't well developed. And let me tell you, he still feels like pretty undercooked. His first opportunity came in The Avengers, the Miracle movie. Why Miracle movie? Because it combined different storylines and it successfully mixed them together. And it was a miracle. Hawkeye, in this movie, he was pretty much a sacrificial lamb. In The Avengers, he was mostly Loki's errand boy, mindless errand boy. In his second at bat was Avengers Age of Ultron, the movie in which Joss Whedon successfully introduced the Vision and the Scarlet Witch. Quicksilver was kind of okay, but look, Joss Whedon fumbled the ball twice. With Ultron, for God's sakes. He said, oh, for God's sakes, a man-made entity mentioned God? Come on, that doesn't make any sense. And his quippy face expressive. I don't know. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And he also failed with fleshing out of Hawkeye. If he seemed boring before, now we knew for sure. Again, in the very first, I think the first 5 minutes, he gets shot. He becomes a victim again. And he's the reason Quicksilver gets shot to death. Even in What If, we could care less about the character. So, who is to blame? The guy who wrote the script for the first two Avengers movies. The producer and the creative committee who approved it. Writer, that means writer-director Joss Whedon. Producer Kevin Feige, the man who makes most of our dreams come true, but this proves that nobody's perfect. Back then, both worked under Marvel Entertainment and their leash-like creative committee composed of writer Brian Michael Bendis, writer-artist publisher Joe Quesada, and executives Dan Buckley and Anne Fine. Whedon tends to write quippy, witty, self-aware, sometimes unrealistic dialogue that always tries to be clever. His world vision is full of irony, cynicism, skepticism, and sarcasm. If, as an actor, you are equipped with comedic timing, like Robert Downey Jr., like Sam L. Jackson, like Chris Hemsworth, You will do okay. You will do okay on a Joss Whedon script. But Jeremy Renner, despite being a fine actor, he wasn't born with that. He doesn't have comedic timing. Therefore, his sardonic, self-deprecating jokes in Age of Ultron do not stick the landing. In that movie, Hawkeye is revealed as a family man. But when he talks to his wife, it feels funny because it feels like he's talking to his mother instead of his wife. So is Jeremy Renner to blame here? That's a very good question. An actor makes the best with what he's got, with what he's given. What he was given wasn't great. But there's something else. If in his contract there's a no mask clause, and there might be one, because in Avengers Endgame, we see him removing his running mask, not actually wearing it. If that's true, then he is to blame as well. Do clothes make the man? Maybe not, but it sure makes a superhero. Please raise your hand if you want to see a Batman movie in which he's not wearing his cape and his cowl. I don't think anybody wants that. Well, the same goes for Hawkeye, and he's not half as interesting or as popular as Batman. Visually, Hawkeye is based on the Ultimate Universe instead of the classic 616 Marvel Classic Universe, and that was a mistake. That look is too generic and forgettable. I've been saying that since day one. We've seen the first episode of the Hawkeye Disney Plus show. Our friend Screechy has seen the first two. She said that it looks a lot like the slower paced Marvel Netflix show. I disagree. I think the pacing was fine. But she also said that it was a more Kate Bishop centric show than expected, and she's completely right, at least in the very first episode. So, are we excited to see more Hawkeye? Well, yes and no, because I'm excited about seeing Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova again, and she's supposed to show up sometime during the series. So, before you think that we hate Jeremy Renner, we sure don't. I think he's a very good actor. I like him a lot in 28 Weeks Later, in The Hurt Locker, in Ben Affleck's The Town, in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, and in Wind River. But I don't love his take on Hawkeye. We'll still watch. We are still MCU fans, so once the series is done, we'll get back to you and tell you what we thought about it. This was another Lights, Camera, Super Action. See you around, fellas.